I'm mostly an illustrator. I will draw on just about anything. So paint, sketchbooks. Right now I'm really big into drawing on clothes. That's my main medium. Anything to get the weird pictures out of my head. I've always been doing art, and it sort of became a thing that I sort of mapped my life around in high school. Art was kind of the thing that I kind of hidden and did by myself. I am a giant nerd, so I will find inspiration in weird science things. I'm really into space, and I love comic books, so anything superhero or zombie vampire stuff. I've got a ton of different wells that I sort of find, and color is a big thing that I really love to play with as well. So anything that sort of like catches my eye and makes me think a little is what inspires. It's generally just having something in my head and knowing that I have a story to tell, and I need to communicate it through an image. So that's the main reason that puts me in my studio, is if I've got something that's been sort of like a bee in my bonnet that I need to just express visually. So that's the main thing that I'm always sort of trying to express in my work. Art is important because it allows people to get an emotion and a feeling out that I don't think a certain section of us can do otherwise. It's sort of the expression that helps people just find themselves and express it to the world. That's kind of been what gets me going and gets me excited to see new art, to do new art, and find others that sort of express themselves in similar ways. I was a big component in the Freak Alley gallery downtown, and I've missed being able to do that with people and going and painting murals and communicating with my art friends. It's a bit like artist summer camp down there, and so we don't get to do that when there's a pandemic happening. I think the fact that it is such a small, close-knit community, I've been able to make connections with artists that I probably wouldn't have been able to have connections with in a larger space, or would have felt like I wasn't up to caliber in a larger city. So it's been nice to be able to at least know that there are people out there that support me and are rooting me on, and we can all swap ideas. So that's also allowed me to connect with smaller businesses and get to design things that are more ad-based and graphic design based, which is cool too. Several of the jackets that I've designed, I've sold. They are a little harder because people have to bring me jackets, and again, pandemic, it's tough to swap clothing during this time of the world. But I've done a couple kids books, and I worked with the Western Idaho Fair and designed their 2018 and 2019 ad. So I was the character designer for all of the odd little farmyard characters that were on billboards all over the valley. That was a fun sort of commission, and hoping that I can continue finding things like that here. I think as Boise is growing and as the scene is growing, we've gotten more unique people into town, and the people that already live here are coming up with really creative ways to display art or to get art out into the community. And I feel like the VAC is one of those places, and we're all kind of rallying around them, trying to make sure that that stays open. And Freak Alley was my sort of intro into it, and I really want both of those spaces to maintain and continue so that other artists and other people can experience sort of the creatives in the community. I think everyone's kind of working as hard as they can to keep spaces that are here present, and hopefully when the world comes back online, we can all sort of open new spaces and find creative ways to kind of gather and view art again. Art is something that I will always do. I'll be somewhere senile and painting on the walls if they allow me. It's just creating and mixing colors, and even supply shopping is an exciting part of being an artist because there's potential to it. Having something in your head and being able to bring it out in the world is just something super special that an artist gets to do. I can't imagine not being able to do that. So that's something that I will always be constantly creating.
My primary medium is borosilicate glass torch work. Taken a lot of crafts classes through junior high, and then got interested in tying hemp necklaces, buying glass beads, and then I actually was fortunate enough to meet a guy that was making those, and I saw him making them, and I got pretty much hooked right away. I start with cold glass, and then I'll heat it up manually here on the torch, and use the torch, gravity, centrifugal force, and some tools to manipulate the glass. The furnace glass is a lower temperature, has a softening point of like between 900 and 1,000 degrees, and then the softening point of borosilicate glass, which is this type of glass, is 1,510 degrees. When I first started, there wasn't even any place to get classes or anything like that. So again, that's one of the reasons why we do our public demos. We do offer classes and stuff like that. You know, a lot of that was pretty organic as far as what I create. Some of it's been a mixture of what people have asked me to make. I definitely get inspired by making like little nature work. I do a lot of like aquatic life, fish, turtles, like sea turtles, octopus. And then just I like the vessel work as well, like the shapes of vessels, trying to create a particular shape, classic vessel work. I'm still really mesmerized by the material. The difficulty factor in working with it always keeps me interested. You can always like up the scale of something that you're working on, or just push yourself in a different direction, making, you know, like I said, going from a wildlife sculpture or something to like a nice high-end set of champagne flutes or a big vase or something like that. Definitely like the difficulty of the medium combined with what you can make has always just really intrigued me. It always keeps you interested. Going to bed, you're thinking about projects. Waking up, you're thinking about what you're gonna make in the morning. Art's always, it's like when you get inspired and something makes you smile, or you think, oh, that's really beautiful. I've always thought that like machines, beautiful machines looked good, nice cars looked good. My crafts teacher was obviously a big inspiration for me. He made beautiful clay pieces. And then now being around other artists here in the Valley, I get exposed to it all the time, and I definitely really appreciate beautiful artwork. Like getting a good painting, you know, can inspire you to make a good sculpture or something like that. Primarily vessel work, bottles, cups, vases. I do quite a bit of like jewelry work, like pendants, and I dabble in marbles and a little bit of sculpture. It's like mesmerizing from start to finish. There's tense moments where you're right on the edge of finishing a project, and you know the failure could come at any second for a number of reasons. And yeah, it's just constantly a technical challenge. And for me, it's kind of just a soothing process to be in motion and working with it. So my annealing oven here, my kiln, I'll use that for preheating an item. So like if I needed to work on this piece of tubing, generally I'll stick it in the oven to warm up to temperature. That thing holds at 1,050 degrees, which is also the annealing temperature for glass. So then depending on how thick it is, and there are some other variables, but generally on how thick it is, you'll have it on a cool down cycle too, so it'll ramp down in temperature and cool nice and slowly. But you know, it's I use that thing all day. It's another tool, basically a holding it temperature tool, and then for all my finished product, it sits in there overnight, and I'll take it out in the morning. No, I mean, this is what I envision doing the rest of my life. If I can make a little bit of money and do what I like to do anyway. I'm a project guy. I like staying busy and making stuff and working on stuff. So it's just, I mean, my mind just works that way. Again, it's like a big puzzle, and I just want to put all the pieces together. So that's a lifetime's work.
It's probably just being on the wheel is my favorite part. Like actually being in the zone and not listening to the narrative in your head or like what's going on in the world, and just kind of like, I need to make a planter. This is what I'm going to focus on now. Mostly through nature. When I was younger, I would go hiking a lot and pick up rocks. So I definitely have like boxes of rocks at my house. But I always found interest in the little things that are sort of overlooked and the small details in things. And so when I go into the mountains, I mean, we're in the gem state, so it's perfect. When we're in the mountains, I'm focusing on, like the quartz that's growing naturally, and it has this lichen and moss on it, or like the high desert terrain. I'm really just finding it from all around me and trying to incorporate it into my work. And the technique I do is called agate ware. So you mix different colored clay bodies to create one piece. So traditionally, ceramics is one clay body, and then you cover it with a glaze and you add the colors after the fact. But with my work, I like to mix the different clay bodies together, and that's what you see. Like, I don't cover that with a glaze, it's exposed. And it turns into really cool patterns, and I can make the same form and use the same amount of clay body for each piece, but they're always gonna be different. And I think I like that part of it, that it truly is unique in that way. But it can be frustrating too, because it's like, I really like this pattern that you did, and I can try really hard to make that pattern happen again, but yeah, I'm drawn to mixing the clay bodies and exposing them once they're finished, and then just putting a clear glaze over it rather than having a piece and glazing it after. And I think that was because I was so bad at glazing at BSU, which coincidentally, I have a room, the glaze room at BSU now is named after me, but I'm horrible with glazing, so I'm working on that part. But I've been really, really lucky, and in 2019, I worked my ass off, and then had gone on sabbatical from my job, and was like, okay, it's October, I'm gonna work my butt off through the winter, because that's the busiest season, and see how it goes. And then, so I had 3 months of just working really hard, doing markets, did wintry market, and then after that, I had enough money saved up to work until maybe, to pay my bills till maybe March, and then the pandemic hit, and I was like, well, I guess this is what I'm doing now. Received a grant from the Alexa Rose Foundation right before we moved in here, and it basically made it so I could move into this space, which was awesome. So I wrote about, I'm throwing pots in my bathroom, and it'd be awesome if I had like a real space, because I was moving things I was making it at my house and then taking it to the Potter Center. They would fire it, bring it back to my house, glaze it, then they would glaze it. But a huge part of it has been the community aspect of it, having other artists around me to sort of bounce ideas off of, or motivate you, or just be, is this weird? But is it like a cool weird? Like for me personally, it's been just really good to chill me out. I'm a very anxious person, and sort of settle, it grounds me and centers me in a way where I can deal with the world. I think I would be a very different person if I didn't have art in my life. I probably wouldn't be a very fun person. Never. It might not be in the capacity that I'm doing now. Ceramics is really hard on your body, so eventually, my body's gonna give out, and but I think I'm always going to be creating. So whether that's just hand building, unless I don't have my hands anymore, I don't think I could stop creating. And I don't ever see that happening. So
Oil paint. I've been a painter for a long time now. I occasionally do other things as well, but yeah, painting is my primary. I think just really from the earliest age I can remember, I was interested in art, especially painting, looking at it from a young age, and I think in high school decided I really wanted to pursue it. I think about that a lot. I think it's sort of mysterious what will compel somebody to continue on a path through a long period of time. I don't know if I have a really good answer for that, except I feel sort of compelled to do it. To me, painting is kind of a way of knowing, or a way of kind of figuring out what I think or what I believe or what my response is to any particular situation in a way. I want to know, I want to understand, and for me, painting is a way of knowing. The body of work I'm making now, I think is pretty personal in terms of in a way it's kind of a reflection or an investigation of what does compel me to make images, and maybe thinking about where do they come from. I tend to work in kind of bodies of work or series of works. I'll work a certain way for a while until the energy runs out, and then see what happens next. It's very important. I've maintained a studio for a really long time now, and I think it's important for a lot of different reasons. I have a lot of crap, for one thing, so just as a place to have your stuff. I like Boise. I definitely have, I feel like I'm part of a community here of artists, curious people who support each other and are interested in what other people are doing. Sometimes when I'm painting, I'll have rags that get saturated with paint and oil and stuff like that. So sometimes I'll pin them to the wall to give them a chance to dry, so I don't leave piles of dirty rags around. And I just found myself kind of staring at one of them the way one sort of absent-mindedly stares at it, basically anything, and as a way of kind of inviting images to sort of emerge, cloud gazing, or the famous description that Leonardo wrote of, staring at the water stains on the ceiling until, an entire world sort of emerges. So I found myself kind of doing that, and at the same time thinking about what has influenced me, especially in terms of writers. I didn't want to necessarily try to take on other painters, and using this image of the rag as a way of kind of having almost an emblem for that idea within each painting. And in the same way that an image will coalesce out of some random arrangement like that, thinking about how images sort of emerge from the substrate of a painting itself, and at the same time thinking about these writers who've sort of occupied my mind in a way over many years, that just don't go away, that kind of are always there, and how that, I think in a way that's a great thing. I think most people think of, art as just positive, and artists' relationship to other artists as being, inspirational, but I think it can be a little more complex and ambivalent, I guess you'd say. So these paintings, I think, are a way of trying to grapple with a lot of these different ideas at the same time. I think it can help one, make sense of their world, their existence, create meaning in your life. And then, and hopefully that experience gets communicated to others through the work, ideally. It is, I think, ultimately about connecting. What's going to help us understand and give ourselves meaning, if not art. When I'm 6 feet under, I think I don't have any plans of retiring, if that's what you mean. Yeah, and I think everybody always, you go through periods of being productive and being fallow, and I think that's inevitable. But since I'm not doing it as a way of making a living, and that's not my main goal, I don't know why I would ever stop.
I'm a painter. I mostly work with oil and acrylic, but I do acrylic with mixed media. I've been painting, I've been making things since like middle school. In middle school, I was really interested in photography at first because my dad had like a Pentax, manual camera, and so I got interested in photography. But then part of me was like wanting to draw, and so I kind of bypassed a lot of the preliminary drawing classes in high school because I wanted to get to the drawing and painting classes. So I would just have to say, like, since high school I've been wanting to make things, and I actually was fortunate enough to go to my dream art school. I went to the San Francisco Art Institute, but going from high school to college, it was kind of a weird transition because, I wasn't taught like those intro level, like, this is how you set things up. It was kind of just like, go start painting. You're an artist, you should know what you should be doing. I'm really inspired by vintage National Geographics. I'm like a big hoarder of National Geographics, and like the older the better. I like the old advertisements for, different forms of technology, like old radios and old cameras. Like, there's the camera thing again, right? Coming from like the initial inspiration to create is photography. So National Geographics kind of appear in my work. I like to find like pictures of things to kind of include in my mixed media pieces. Old photographs, that either I find or that come from my family members. Like right now I'm using a lot of reference pictures from my family, like pictures that my parents took like in the 60s and the 70s and even before. When my son was born, I kind of had like a wake-up call. I think like the spark to create was reborn in me because my main motivation is to leave something that my son is proud of, kind of like a legacy. Like, my mom made this, and she was interested in these questions. She was interested in materials. So yeah, I think my son is my main motivation, like showing him, I'm gonna get like kind of weepy, showing him that you can, dedicate your time to making your own things, to leaving behind your ideas and your thoughts. Artists are the voice, right? We express things that other people don't like think about expressing, or they don't take the time to. Yeah, because not everyone has the luxury to make things, or the time, or the money, or even the knowledge. So it's kind of, a responsibility to be that voice. Boise is not a big city yet. So I feel like if, all the artists come together in Boise, we could build a really strong community. I think it's starting to build just with being able to connect with everyone on Instagram and social media and sharing ideas. So I think if we all come together, we can help each other out, we can support each other, we can, have shows hopefully when things open up again. So yeah, I'm very interested in supporting other artists and helping and teaching. My traffic box is at Konkol and U-Stick, and it represents the 4 directions. When I found out where it was, because I run from our house over to that area, and when I realized where it was going to be, like the concept came to my mind, like, okay, the sun comes up and each side of the traffic box has a different color, symbol, a meaning for the different cardinal directions. Oh my gosh, no. No, I don't think so. I mean, not even, so this is going to sound really bad, but I have a PowerPoint that I just have saved for when students don't want to work on their artwork. I've only shown it one time, but it's artists with disabilities, and what they do to create. So yeah, even if I lost an arm or, lost my eyesight, I feel like I would try to find a way to make art, to express myself, to create, because it's been a part of my life since I was a little girl, wanting to make things, just being curious about materials. So I don't think I would ever stop making art.
Well, I think of myself as a mixed media sculptor. So I work with metals, woods, plastics, text, images. I was born with it. I'm a maker. Like basically every part of my life is in some way creative. So it's the thing I can't not do. So a lot comes from music. I'm a big fan of a great turn of phrase. So I will hear some little snippet of a lyric that just lends itself to being built into a sort of a visual. So a lot of things come from music. Every once in a while from a novel, or just walking around in the world. So my undergraduate degree is in photography, and I was kind of a tried and true photographer, and then I took a sculpture class. When the university art degree is you have to take everything, right? And so I took this sculpture class, and it sparked some interest, and then I took this second one, and I learned how to weld. And the very first sculpture that I made, that I welded together, I sold that, and which kind of turned a light bulb on for me. And then when I graduated from school, I didn't really want to be a commercial photographer. Like, I wasn't really interested in doing weddings and seniors, so I started building furniture, and then it just and then I just kind of took off from there. Then but as I think back on it, I was always a builder, right? Like, when I was a kid, I was all about Legos and Lincoln Logs and blocks, and building wheelchairs for my Barbies, and crazy stuff like that. So it's ultimately important. Like, I worked in my little teeny one-car garage for about 10 years, and that was fine when I was just a welder, right? When I was just building furniture, but when I went to graduate school, I did a great materials exploration, and I had studio space at school. And then I tried to move back in and add all the materials back in. I tried to add all the materials into my garage, and it wasn't working anymore. So I just didn't fit there anymore. And so it took a couple years for me to really figure out, I'm just gonna have to rent a space. I'm gonna have to bite the bullet and rent a space. And so in 2010, I did that, and I'll never look back. I think that art is a basic human need. We as a species have had art since we stood up straight. There is no culture in the history of humanity that has had no art, which makes me believe that it is a basic human need, which it's really the thing that separates us from, the apes, which, I don't know, they might have art too. So, otters, I think they make art. I get a lot of satisfaction out of teaching, which was a thing I didn't know was true for me. So I started teaching for the first time when I basically the first day I started graduate school, because I got a teaching assistantship, and I had no idea that I was a teacher, or that I would be good at it, or that I would even like it. And I discovered that I really love it. Like, I feel like it's part of my dharma, not only to be a maker, be a creator, but to facilitate other people in their road towards being a creator. I think it's all one big thing for me. What I always tell my students is try, apply. And this is the most important thing. Don't reject yourself. Give other people the opportunity to reject you. That really is the best advice. Artists don't retire. That's not a thing. It's the thing that we can't not do. So I have already decided that, if I get to the point where I'm old and can't muscle things around anymore, that I'll become a painter. Paintbrushes aren't as heavy as big sculptures, so.
Primary art medium is decks of cards. I've actually been referred to as a decksmith, which I kind of like that. You have your goldsmith that takes the gold and tries to make something else out of it. I take playing cards and make them as three-dimensional as I can based on the artwork behind them. Well, first I got interested in playing cards It's kind of a tough one. I don't even know what was going on. I think when I was trying to get in through testing through firefighting and whatnot, I noticed that the dexterity of my fingers weren't exactly where I wanted it to be, especially with gloves on. So I was trying to figure out some way to get that going without doing your standard, up and down exercises kind of a thing. And I ended up finding a deck of cards and Magic, and you have to palm it certain ways and your hands have to be a certain way. And I came across a video and he did this thing called cardistry, which is card flourishing and things like that. And I noticed the deck of cards that he was using was really nice looking. I really liked that. I had no idea that there was such a thing as premium playing cards. So I looked into it, grabbed that. That was my first deck. Really loved the tuck case, loved the cards themselves, and then found out that there's this whole community of playing card collectors, magicians, cardists, and I kind of got into it that way. I really want to focus on the art that the artists put into the decks, as well as I don't use any glue. The tuck case himself, I keep it so it's kind of like a shadow box that holds it, so from the front side it looks like a standard deck of cards, and then when you flip it around then you can see the three-dimensional aspect to it. So I just kind of tried it and I've been going ever since. Being a firefighter EMT, I'm also a group fitness instructor. Everything is really high pace, high energy, can be, and so this is really kind of a small focus. I mean, the cards themselves being so small and then the artwork within it, it gives me a time to just kind of breathe and just focus in on trying to get clean line work. And sometimes I don't even know how I'm gonna cut the deck. I just see something and go, oh, that'd be cool if I did that. So I start with that and then I just kind of layer it out, and sometimes it surprises me. But it's really in the community. Like I said, you have magicians who use the cards daily. You have cardists who always do those flourishes, and then you have collectors. Most collectors that I talk to, they buy decks of cards and they keep them sealed in the cellophane and then they sit up on the desk. And I never wanted to do that. I had a collection going, I still do, but 98% of all my cards are open. And that's just because I wanted to see the artwork that the artist put into it. So it's kind of like the tuck case himself can have similar art on the front and back. Sometimes the back of the tuck case is the same as the back design, could be a different color. But what I wanted to do was have it so that if you were a collector and you had a favorite deck of cards, you could have it where you could actually see what the back design and everything looks like. And sometimes I throw in cork cards and flip something around the front ways, but you can see the art of the card within it while still keeping all your other collections sealed up. And so really me opening up the decks and seeing what I liked and what I didn't like is kind of what drives me to go further into, okay, what can be done with this deck besides just having it sitting somewhere collecting dust and wiping it off every once in a while. I've always been into art. I'm actually a musician, and so I've always had that in there. I've always wanted to draw and paint. I've just never been that great at it. But art is really something that there's so much out there, right? You have tattoo artists, you have painters, you have sculptors, you have people that make giant things that get placed, that are multi-stories high, and then you have like me just making a little deck of cards, and it's you walk into a house that is just all plain walled and it just seems empty. If you don't have anything, oh, there's a table, there's a bed. You start putting art up and it really starts bringing life into everything. And so I feel like the art world needs to be there because it helps bring life, even when we're going through tough times or when we're at the top peak of our day or our week or our year. Those little moments that we have that we can look at something and enjoy it, even if it's just to look at and just think, you know what, everything's gonna be okay. I think there's always gonna be something there that I'm either going to want to continue doing or try to do, whether it's going into woodworking or working with clay or trying to pick up paint, like different seasons for everything. And I don't think there will ever be a time where I just won't have anything creative going on in my life. There's something that I'm always gonna do, however small or however big a project I think it might be, even if it's just building shelves somewhere to go in my house. It's still that process of I'm making something. It's not all gonna be fine art, but no, there will not be a time where I'll just stop and be done with it.
Last year around April, we started to really realize the impact that the pandemic would have on our concert season. And we came together as a whole group and started to reimagine what we had planned for the season and came up with this idea of the digital stage.
We went from having full orchestral concerts to now how are we going to take the plan for a season of orchestral performance and whittle it down to something that our musicians can do? And the answer was chamber music and a digital stage. So we got the team together, we had a bunch of meetings, lots of brainstorming, came up with a whole new plan and invented a wheel without using round things. That is our digital stage, and it's been quite fantastic.
I can just tell you that it's been beautiful. It's been amazing to see everyone come together and be so creative. And it's also been a year of learning. And so I think I'm excited for how we're going to bring all of those different pieces together in the future when we have live concerts and virtual concerts.
We're attempting to make a bigger impact on the community by being a part of the community, not just being on a stage. So over the next season, the community will see us in a new way, deeper in the community, constantly a part of our downtown programs, and really attempting to uplift and tell the stories of this community through the music that we play.
Art is one of these magical things that we have as humans to relate and connect to each other. And I think especially during a year like we've just had, where we've just experienced so much loss, so much time apart, and also I think, reflection on what we have to be grateful for. There's nothing quite like art and music to help us make meaning out of all of these things that we're going through together. And I think it has a unique way of telling the story of our place and our time in history in ways that, just kind of experiencing the world in other ways can't. And so, I think we have this great gift to add a little spark of wonder and joy into this time.
It's more critical than ever. Art and artists typically reflect the communities and the times in which they live. And when times are tough, particularly tough, that's when the arts and the culture really have to step it up and provide that outlet for people. And when people can't come together to experience it together, that's when that digital pivot is really, really critical, so folks can experience the music and have an outlet for their emotions.
There's been quite a lot of engagement with learning about who our musicians are and the stories that they're telling, whether that's on stage or through the Backstage with the Phil program that we do that's put out after each premiere, which delves deeply into the music itself, the musicians, stuff like that. So overall, people are really enjoying getting to know our musicians better, whether that's their faces or their masks, or just like the fact that you're so much closer to them with this than you are in the concert hall.
I feel like most people in the arts recognize that classical music living on the stage is something that needs to change and has needed to change for a long time. And the only depressing part about it is that it took something like a global pandemic to get us to make a change. The digital stage, and not just for the Boise Philharmonic, but for performers all around the globe, finding a new way to create new music and new art in a visual and oral medium for folks to consume, it's been long, long overdue. So in the future season, we will have complete full orchestral concerts again, but we will also have elements of the digital stage so we can keep that new and fresh approach to consuming the music and to hearing it and interacting with us. One thing we heard a lot about is how much our audience loves the personal interaction they feel with musicians when they see that close-up camera shot of them. And so we're gonna do our best to preserve those sorts of elements while still holding true to our traditions.
I think, this year has been just incredible to see how much our community values music and art. And it's been amazing to see the creativity that the other arts organizations throughout the Treasure Valley have used to create music, art, dance throughout the pandemic. And it's exciting to be in this region because I think as we start to open up and live events start coming back and we start to reconnect, I think we just have the most vibrant, incredible community of artists, art makers, and supporters. So I'm excited for what the future holds for the Treasure Valley.
Well, obviously neon, but I do other things too. Some porcelain enamel, which is basically powdered glass melted onto steel or copper. Well, I'd always loved working with glass. They had a nice program at College of Idaho where I attended. But many years later, I saw an ad in the Idaho Statesman for an apprentice, and I was sick and tired of what I was doing, so I answered the ad and I fibbed a little bit, said, oh, I know all about neon. They hired me. It's simpler than one would think. You start with a glass tube that either has phosphor coating on it to give it color, or it's just clear glass. There are a couple of different main gases we use, argon and neon. Neon being the sort of orange color that you see behind me, and argon is a blue gas. And between those two and the phosphor coatings on the inside, you can get maybe 120, 140 different colors. So the color palette is fairly large. It's not a modern technique by any means. There are lots of people who just love the look of neon, and it's got a special glow and a look to it that people really enjoy, and they're nostalgic for it. So there's a lot of call for folks that want to either restore something or make something that looks vintage. And then of course, the vast majority of my work is wholesale work for other sign companies. So the Valtex sign downtown is something I restored, one of the very first restorations. Olympic Hotel, the wings at the airport. I don't know if you've ever seen those things. There's a few downtown art pieces. One, Amy Westover did one, the canal, sort of these curvy aluminum things that has neon inside to illuminate. That's another thing about neon is people don't realize while it's a light bulb, it's very long-lived. I have some things in here that haven't really been turned off for 20 years. And then tattoo parlors galore, Black Cat, Chalice, and a few others. There are people that do this in a garage or a shed out back. For me, I just need more space because I do a lot of work for other companies, and so often there are racks of glass laying around all through the studio. You get to miss all of that. But yeah, this space is good, and it's nice to be in a building that also has creatives working. Often I find that that's stimulating for the creative process. I try to make something once a month, whether anyone wants it or not. So most of what you see behind me have been in shows before and just haven't sold. So I keep them, and once in a while someone will wander in and see something and go, oh, I gotta have that. Plus I like the pretty glow. And I've frankly never been busier than this last year and a half, which I find stunningly weird, considering. Personal satisfaction, mostly. I mean, when I make a piece of art, it's first and foremost, it's because I want to make it. And frankly, I don't care if people like it or not. It's for myself. But on the other hand, I can also tell stories. I can show my inner feelings sometimes through the art. It's a process that I just enjoy so much. The creative process, like most artists, I think is the main goal. At least it is for me. I carry a little notebook with me everywhere I go, and if I have an idea, I write it down, and if it's still valid in a day or two and makes sense, then I'll proceed. I'm working on a series of skateboard neon art, but right now that's been my main focus. I love getting up in the morning and thinking about my day and what I'm gonna do that day. I'm not a terribly driven person necessarily, but I do love what I do. Coming to work is a joy, not a chore. Probably being a bigger fish in a smaller pond has been helpful for me over the years. I know that places like Portland or Seattle or LA are still pretty big neon hotspots, and there are a lot of neon artists that work out of those cities, at least on the West Coast, that I know of, and frankly, they're fantastic. Everything is done by hand. There's no jigs, no troughs, no help. I just follow a pattern, kind of like a paint by numbers almost. Never. I will die with an idea in my head, I'm sure, wishing I could make it happen.
This is a fully functional Mosaic workshop. 40 hours a week we crank out Mosaic and products that incorporate Mosaic. I actually did an apprenticeship. I had worked in tile before, so I had a background in tile working after I graduated from college. But initially, as I think about it now, when I was living in Missoula, how I got turned onto it was by a guy who had a lodgepole pine furniture shop, and he was doing these hodgepodge mosaic trout on top of these tables. And he knew I was into fishing, and so he kind of brought me into it. So he knew I had a background in tile even at that time. He was kind of doing spot jobs because as a fishing guide, you know, you might work in the winter doing something like that, and like tile or whatever, because you can't fish. And so he brought me in, and he loved fly fishing, and he kind of showed me what he was doing, and that was in the fall of 1996. You know, Mosaic changes so drastically that, I mean, even the most basic image can be turned into something that's pretty, I mean, because again, Mosaic has these design elements that you lose in painting and stuff like that, like joints and shaping. So you can take something that's basically a coloring book image, and if it's done with the right palette and done within the right style, man, you can make something like a starfish, which is seemingly pretty basic, but you can, with the use of color and things like that, you can turn it into something spectacular. For classes, for example, if I'm sort of excited about the classes, people are going to be down with it. If I'm not excited about it, they're not going to be excited about it. And so turning people on to Mosaic for like in the beginner classes, man, it's tons of fun that way. And I meet tons of friends from around the world through art, through instruction. It's sometimes hard to get excited about art when there are hungry people in the community, when there's so much discord and this. This should, you know, it's tough to celebrate stuff when we have so much other stuff going on. But then people will argue that art helps us deal with that other stuff, that you're kind of seeing it from a flawed point of view. That art is actually the link that keeps helps us stay grounded and yeah, you know, music, I guess, is sort of, that's a good question about that too, but you know, this is the antithesis of playing a song. Because this takes forever, whereas a song takes 2.5 minutes. But you know, I mean, I guess it is. We do art and we love it, and for us, it's the art. You know, selling someone a piece of art, there's tons of satisfaction. You know, so. But like I say, I come from a weird, cynical punk rock background where consciousness is a curse. I hope it's worth it, but it's hard to celebrate some of that stuff when you see what you see, and you're just like, I don't know, man. Anyway. For sure. There are times where I'm just so stoked about finishing these projects, you know, where I do have that like sort of like spring in your step a little bit and you're ready to go. Because again, it's easy to get, it's not always this way, but oftentimes if I don't have anything to do throughout the day, like cut stone or something like that, if I can just work on projects, I mean, it's fun as hell. But the monoliths, you know, they're kind of based on the cool liths in like England and Ireland and on the French coast and Scotland, you know, that's kind of what they're based upon. But yeah, man, and it's kind of one of those things where not everybody can do it. You know, pilasters, when you're traveling down some old trail somewhere and there's, you know, like a wave marker or a mile marker, I'm gonna love that sort of nostalgia. It's just Mosaic, man. I mean, it's kind of one of those things you kind of have to give yourself to one component of it and just keep pushing. I'm hoping to go to the Chicago Mosaic School in the next couple of years because the shaping part of it and being able to cut stuff is one thing, but use of color and things like that, you know, that's something that it's good to learn about. And, you know, you can cut straight lines till the cows come home, but if you use the wrong colors or you could have used them in another way that you didn't think of, you know, it's kind of a bummer. And that's how you distinguish your work from other people, because there's a lot of Mosaic people in the world. There's a lot of Mosaic people just in this town. But you know, between this and music, you know, the accordion music, the Irish stuff, and the world music that's the pub band kind of puts out, I mean, we get paid money to do that. And if you work hard and gig about, you know, so between that and this, but you know, that's a beautiful thing. I guess we'll have to see if my hands hold out, my elbows, because it's a lot of repetitive motion. You know? And your arms, it's like playing the accordion, your arms are always bent. So your elbows and your joints just get tired, man. And it's like double duty. My elbows are wondering, You know, like, what are you doing, man? I want you to sit at your desk and don't move at all.
Blown glass. Been doing glass about 25 years, full time now. I used to do pottery and actually wanted to be a pottery teacher, and then I went to Seattle, take a glass blowing class for 6 weeks, and been doing it ever since. So I use it comes in little pellets that's already been melted once, and so I put that in the furnace, and it gets up to about 2100 degrees and melts it overnight, and so it's always, the furnace never shuts off. It's always about over 2000 degrees. So it goes for a year or so at a time before you shut it off, fix whatever you need to fix in it. But so yeah, it's a lot of fuel I'm electric on the furnace, and then the other ovens we do are gas. So I do a lot of electricity. When I was up in Roby Creek, I was up in the mountains for about 10 years, and it's perfect conditions. Winter was nice. Had big bay doors that opened up, so it was kind of like being outside in the winter and having snow. We were running everything on propane. We were doing about 1,000 gallons a month, which is not cheap. So the electricity is a lot more efficient now, and that's what I converted the furnace to electric, so it's a little better. But yeah, it's a lot of fuel of some sort. Probably the most enjoyable tool is it's just a piece of wet newspaper that you can use and just form it. You can actually pretty much touch the glass with it, so that's one that is more enjoyable, but sometimes you can burn yourself. But yeah, the Wall Street Journal's the best for not as much color in there, so it burns better. I get my inspiration pretty much just from either previous pieces or just stuff that I want to make, pretty much anywhere. I can just, the desire to make something, make new things. Pretty much it's I just got to get my orders done is where I've been at for a while now. I have a lot of production stuff I do and stuff that's not super fun, but what inspires me, I guess, to get up is to get my orders done so then I can make something that's not an order. That's something that I want to make, but it doesn't happen that often, but it does happen. And everybody wants to learn about it. Everybody's fascinated by it, and I enjoy the teaching aspect of it, and it's kind of showing people something they've never seen before. It feels good. I let people keep it pretty open, but you can do bowls, vases, paperweights, anything like that if you want to do that. And yeah, I'll help them out as much as they want. I had an 85-year-old lady cry in here the other day because she was so happy about finally doing it. And not a lot of things that you can show an 85-year-old person that makes that big of a difference to them. So it feels pretty good. We do them pretty much any day, Monday through Saturday. It's very therapeutic for a lot of people when they do glass, but I've always enjoyed creating things and making things to show people, and hopefully it might make them feel better if they see it, but or feel good about it, but enjoy it. It's pretty fun most of the time, except for summertime. It's a little rough on the conditions. It's kind of like doing physical labor in a sauna. Not always fun, but after you work with it a while, you get pretty used to it, so it seems pretty safe after a while. You just have to drink a lot of water. That's the main thing. Oh, it's nice. It's nice to have enough space, actually. It's been my last studio. I had a little tiny gallery space, so I couldn't show everything, and so now I'm almost getting enough stuff to fill up a little gallery here, so yeah, it's been nice. Yeah, I've done a few big chandelier things that are kind of fun, and did one dragon that was pretty fun, but pretty much anything that's not a doorknob or a white light shade. That's what I do 90% of my time, is make doorknobs and light shades, so anything that's not an order is my favorite thing I've ever made. Most things it takes anywhere from half an hour to, you can spend several hours. You can do a lot of prep work and you could get a whole day of doing prep work and bank the piece, and then you can lose it all in a fraction of a second. So it doesn't happen that often. When you're learning, it happens you're probably breaking half the stuff you're making at least. But after 20 years or so, most stuff comes out pretty close, but it definitely doesn't always work out. So making big stuff is fun, but it does take a toll on your body and whatnot, and so I sometimes have to scale it back just to save my hands. No, probably not. I'm all in at this point, so I don't, and there's so many things that I want to make that I haven't made yet that I gotta start getting to it.
Technically it's mixed media. Most of my end products are digital, but I always start out with a pencil under drawing, and I do digital line work in Procreate, and I color in Photoshop, and I animate in Photoshop and After Effects. So it's kind of a broad range of things. So that's why I say mixed media. I mean, I've been drawing, illustrating since I was a kid, but I got serious about it and started leaning into more professional illustration work about 5 years ago. Accomplishing things professionally within the world of illustration is super validating and exciting and intimidating and enthralling and all of those things at once. And yeah, I mean, it's like a whole range of things, but mostly it's like super exciting because illustration is such a meandering career path, and it's so untraditional, I think, in the normal sense of a career. And so I think once accomplishments start coming down the pipeline, it starts to get exciting and validating in a way that's different than like a traditional career trajectory. I had a few successes submitting to awards shows, fortunately. So I was able to get awarded by 3x3 Illustration Annual, as well as more recently Communication Arts Illustration Annual, as well as American Illustration. So it began with sort of getting some validation from an editor who had a credible reputation in the industry that I wanted to work in. And from there, it just progressed to gaining exposure to my clients and sort of starting to get some commissioned work out of that. Every once in a while you have like things that stand out to you in your memory because it becomes like a turning point, and that's one of them. I remember kind of walking outside on one of the trails up behind Camel's Back after my review with him, and I was like, holy shit, like I could actually do this. Like this is something that I could accomplish if I wanted, just because of someone's like opinion. And I don't think it should always be that way, but it worked that way for me and like encouraged me in the right way. And I was like, oh my God, like this is actually possible. Like it blew my mind. I was like off to the races after that, so. And actually I had done an interview with that same editor a year before where he was like, this is trash, this needs to go, you need to take this off your Instagram, don't do this anymore, your website's confusing in this way. And it was actually mostly negative, but he like gave me like 20% encouragement where he was like, you got chops, like you can do this if you want, but you need to like correct these things, like course correct here. And so that's actually like, that's why I came to him a year later, because I had spent that full time like working on the things that he was telling me about in the first kind of paid critique. So, well, it's hard. I mean, like it is hard to make myself sit down and work, especially during the summer. I would so much rather be out on a trail somewhere sometimes. But there's like a certain number I have in my head of hours that I want to work every week to accomplish my goals. And before I had implemented that style of structure and regimen to my creative process, I wasn't seeing the results that I wanted to see. And then by doing that, I started to see the results that I wanted to see. Once I started getting even the smallest little successes, started helped like that snowball and helped build momentum and build motivation to get up in the morning and like put in those extra hours to accomplish what I wanted to accomplish. The advice that's never failed me was from my professor at Boise State in the illustration department, Bill Carmen, and he said that pretty much to the effect of butt in the chair, working longer and better. You know, it's just putting in hours in. A part of kind of the initial momentum that I've been able to enjoy as an illustrator here has been in large part due to the Boise City Department of Arts and History's public art programs like the Traffic Box and just like the various grants that they put out throughout their cycle. The first kind of public art project that I worked on last year was a traffic box. I also worked on a transit shelter last year. The budgets are right, the work is put up in amazing places. It's fun to go see your work in like as a part of the environment here. I think art is important because it captures abstract concepts that we become detached from, that are like intrinsic to our meaning and our like biology and our evolution as creatures. I think it like attaches us to those abstract patterns of behavior that are beneficial to us in life. And I think music does that. I think visual art does that in different ways. But I think if you did away with that, life would be too rigorous and logical.
Well, mainly the ceramic tile. that I make, but also we can't display it without Harry's steel frames.
The wall frames, you'll notice, are kind of a coppery or different color, and those are we make those colors ourselves. We stain the steel, and it comes out all kinds of different colors, and then I'll put a clear coat, an automotive clear coat, over the top, so again it can be out in the weather all year round, and the sun can shine on it, and it's good finish.
We met on the property.
Yeah, let's talk about our little story.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Go ahead.
So on our Instagram page, we have a video that kind of tells our story, but in a nutshell, we met on this property.
30 plus years ago.
Mutual friends. We liked each other right away. Ended up when the friends moved away, we moved in. We've been working on the place ever since, but we're really proud of the fact that we are carbon negative.
We have a great solar power setup here. We have a 5 kW system that powers this shop completely. We have a welder and a plasma cutter, the kiln. Everything we do in here is powered by the sun. We actually make more power than we use here in the shop. So we can use some take credits on our house. We're generating more power than we're using, and we're pretty proud of that. That's a good thing that we all should be doing. We were building an outdoor kitchen on our house, and Kat decided she wanted to do some mosaic work on the countertops. Found a place in Arizona called Santa Teresa Tileworks, and they made similar flowers and animals and so forth, and Kat thought maybe she'd like to try that, and so we decided to send her down there, and she went down for, how long was it?
It was a week-long intensive course, and there were probably 10 or so of us there. Learned how to physically make tile in this method, and then I came home. We had a kiln that we'd bought used from a friend, and Harry gave me a room here in his shop. I got started and haven't looked back since.
It's been really good. Just kind of evolved into something that we could do together. After I retired is when kind of Kat started making the tile, and as you can see, this is no longer my shop. This is now Rocky Canyon Tile Shop. I've been shoved out the back door, but it's just great. I mean, we have a wonderful relationship, and we are really enjoying sharing this. She's the artist. I'm the muse, if you will.
Well, obviously I like bright colors, but you know, it's our surroundings. I've always loved flowers. We are overrun with quail and lazuli buntings and goldfinch. I mean, we have all kinds of different animals, birds. We just love where we live and how we live. And I think it comes out in our artwork. You know,
it's we're like making a living and working together and being on this site together and sharing it. It's that's all the motivation I need.
And I need something to do.
Yes.
So, as Harry reminds me, it's better to use my powers for good rather than evil. The family appreciates it. So, yeah, I love this. It's therapy for me. I love repetition. So, glazing 30 bees at a time doesn't bother me. In fact, I love it. So, I can't wait. Harry knows I come down here first thing in the morning. He has to remind me it's lunchtime. You know, this is a dream come true. No. No. Not at this point. It's getting worse.
She loves it. She'll sit in here, and again, she makes every single tile, every little detail on every tile herself. And it takes hours and hours and hours. And she will sit down here for hours and hours and just have a ball making these tiles. So it's something that she can do as long as she can do it. And so, yeah, it's been great for both of us, and so, yeah, I'll keep doing it as long as I can.
Thank you.
Business-wise, I've been working with balloons for 2 years, a little over 2 years, but I've been playing around with them for 4 years, so 2 years before then. I did not invent this idea at all. Other people were doing it. It was mostly popular in larger cities, and Australia. It was really big. And so I just thought that's really cool. I wonder, if I could add that to my party supply. And then I started to really like it and want to make bigger pieces, and and so I just went for it. I owned a online party supply store for 7 years, and so I started getting into selling balloons and balloon garlands, and so that's what introduced me to the art. And they're all kind of created into 6-foot sections, and that's how I sell my garlands, is in 6-foot sections. And so I just bring them there, and then I assemble them and put them together and create and design them on site. So everything's inflated, kind of ready to go, and then I just have to put it together. I get my feelings hurt when they pop. When I'm like inflating them, I'm like, that was really rude. Like, okay, you don't want to be a part of this. All right. But they don't really pop as often as people think that they do. With the summer, that's been, the heat that we've been getting, they get a little bit more angrier on it, but the balloons just don't pop that easily. I do buy high quality balloons, so it shouldn't happen. So yeah, I used to just at the beginning not really knowing what I'm doing, because this job is, we're all making it up. Like, there are no rules. We're all making it up. And so I looked at other people kind of for guidance, like, well, what are you doing? How are you putting that together? What sizes are they using, And now it's just like, I have a style now, and every artist has a style. And I can be looking through Instagram and see someone and know exactly whose work it is before seeing their name. So now I can inspire myself, because I just know what I like and how I like it to look, and what colors I like to use and what colors I don't like to use. Just 2 years of practice. I was really scared of putting my business out there. Like, I waited 2 years from when I really wanted to do it to finally doing it, because I was afraid people would make fun of me or they wouldn't get it, and there was no one else here doing it. So I was like, there must be a reason that no one else is doing it. So it took me a lot of convincing to just jump and go for it. Yeah, it's really rewarding. It's really satisfying. My online party supply, that was also a really creative thing, because I didn't resell. I made custom party supplies. So customers would come to me and go, this is my theme. These are the kind of items I want. These are the kind of colors I would use. And I would create an entire, party items for them. So I've been supporting myself through my own creative works, working with my hands for quite a while now, and it is very rewarding. Before then, I was a waitress and a student. I had to rely on someone else to pay me, and I had multiple jobs and was, barely surviving as a single mom. So then when I decided, screw this, I'm gonna decide what I do when I work, when I get paid, how much I get paid, then, it's really rewarding. No, I think I have to do something creative for the rest of my life. Yeah, sometimes I think about like, oh, I'll retire. And I'm like, will you? Like, it'll be something else. Just like I first started with coordinating like events. And then I went into making party supplies. And then I went into balloons. And then I went back into selling parties. And this business or career choice, I don't know what you call it, it's gonna keep changing and turning into something else.
My primary medium right now is, I would say a mixture of things, but it's mostly digital right now. But if I'm gonna go traditional, I really like pen, markers, kind of collaging things together type work ever since I was little. I always loved drawing. It really started becoming very, very involved in my life, when I started kind of getting into anime, I really loved that style and the look, and I just kept drawing from then on, and I just thought, you know, let's just make it a career if we can. So then I got an illustration degree. So I had a lot of time to develop an identity with my art and kind of learn what's out there, what I want to do, what I might not like. You know, it gave me the opportunity to experiment. And so I really like that. And so now I feel more confident in what I want to do and what I have in my style. I really want to convey this in this way. So how am I going to go about that? And so a lot of it, I really want it to be aesthetic. I want it to be kind of pretty. For instance, like I really take inspiration from Alphonse Mucha, which is one of the artists I love because of the detail in the work, and it's just so beautiful, the way he creates these figures and the use of line. So I kind of want to have people kind of see where my inspiration comes from. Well, recently, you know, it's been kind of tough because of the recent world events. So right now I've kind of reignited the love of just going out and drawing people at like coffee shops. Like I love that, just sitting down with my sketchbook, cup of coffee, and then I get to stare at people and just draw them. I did that while traveling. I've done that, you know, I did that throughout school. I've started that practice again, and I just love it, that life drawing. The best way to learn is by copying. So as far as like kind of what I've added to make it my own, I feel like maybe it's not realistic, but I'm not quite sure how to describe it. But I still kind of like the idea of the eyes being the focus. You know, the eyes are the windows to the soul type stuff. And I really still like to have those kind of bigger on like my figures. I think the way I color and the way I draw with line kind of starts to get into the Alphonse Mucha type category and kind of more out of that simple, straightforward kind of anime look. Was able to be on the cover of the Boise Weekly, and so this was the cover. Of course, she's still got those kind of big eyes, but what I love is kind of like just organic line work that's kind of, it could be from any culture, like, and like this is her mask and it's like a butterfly, you know, it's got really cool eyes and kind of organic looking. So it's definitely had its different periods and stages. A lot of the prints I've created was trying to see if like maybe if I focus on kind of animals and maybe I could go into kind of a pet portrait type angle, but you know, I realized that maybe that's not exactly what I'm wanting to do. So kind of moving on from that, then I'm like, okay, well, let's keep practicing on humans and figures and all that. You know, that organic line and a little bit of sparkle, you know, aesthetic, cute, all that good stuff. And then now I've actually kind of started to evolve now into more of wanting to learn how to create like assets for like, say, like a company. Do you need internal like visuals, like graphics for a presentation, for instance? Do you need like stickers for your onboarding with new people as like kind of merch? So I'm starting to think more in that way. That's kind of how it's evolved, rather from this kind of more fine art like realm into more commercial, a little more businessy, and so yeah, that's what I've been kind of cooking up lately. I realized long ago that if I didn't do art, like I genuinely feel like something is missing from me. It just doesn't feel right. Like I always need to be able to have the opportunity to create. And so why not have it integrated with my lifestyle and my career? For a while, I did kind of falter. I was like, well, maybe I could do something else. But then I realized that why not combine it? Because, you know, right now, like people can do pretty much anything they want. I should just be able to combine my talents that aren't creative with my creative talents. But yeah, ultimately, I don't think I could not do anything creative or with art or creation. No, I won't ever stop. Yeah, never.
What's your primary medium?
That's really difficult to answer. I work in a little bit of everything. I have worked with printmaking and sculpture, and so materials of all kinds for that. But really over the course of the last, I would say 10 years, I've focused in on glass, kiln formed glass. So that's just a serious interest, but I would say that I work in a lot of different materials. I think on a deeper level, when you're an artist, you're just an artist. It doesn't ever really necessarily, I mean, maybe for some, there's something that sparks, a desire or a reason to begin creating. I just think that it's always just been part of me and part of who I am, and something that I really feel like I have to do. And that, that's where I feel like I can contribute something to the world. The idea really with creating public art is that there is a chance for people to insert themselves into it. And that's what I'm hoping happens. If you look at Grove Street Illuminated, that was my first public art project, and I think that was my first goal with that project. Was I wanted the artwork to have a space for the person, physically and mentally, like to walk into the artwork and be a part of it. And I don't think that's ever left me as a public artist now. Like that just seems to be part of the way I think. And maybe I just got lucky, I don't know, with how I started off in public art. But that is a big part of what I'm, I guess, trying to achieve as an end goal. Inspiration comes from a lot of different places and sources. I feel like, I'm a studio artist, but I'm also a public artist. And so as a public artist, oftentimes that type of inspiration is driven by all kinds of different factors. There's a site, and there's a connection to community, and there is history to focus on, or there's a desire for regenerating an area or a site in order to activate it. So those have a lot of different motivations, and a lot of different inspirations come out of that. In my studio practice, there's a lot of different things that kind of that have been an inspiration over the years. Right now, I guess I could answer that I've really been focused on more sort of cosmological type of ideas and phenomenon. I've always really been interested in reading and studying like quantum physics. And so that is kind of an endless source of inspiration. And I think it's showing up more and more in my work, especially over the last probably 3-4 years. I'm always so excited to get to work in the morning. There's an endless amount of things. I mean, there's a lifetimes of ideas and projects and things for me to do. Sometimes that can be a source of frustration, but most of the time it is a source of motivation and inspiration. And my husband and daughter and I were sort of homesteaders as well, and we've been building a house. And so I don't really separate any of that from my sense of being an artist. So there's always something to do. There's always something to continue to explore and to learn. And if I could come around multiple lifetimes and continue all of this, I would do it. I think art is important because it's a way to kind of reach down inside someone and pluck a chord. I think that the world in general can become quite monotonous and almost generic. And I think that we've experienced that more and more as we've moved into modern times. Maybe not, I don't know, it's hard to say. But no matter what time and space humans have lived, I think art has always had a very important role to play in just keeping that spirit alive of music, of visual art, of dance, of theater. It reaches in somewhere inside of us and plucks that chord. It creates that vibration and that frequency that we need to have reminders of constantly, that that we're alive and this is like a unique experience. This is special. This is a complete miracle. People say, oh, to illuminate the human condition. It's like, okay, that is like a very, I think of that in terms of a deeper sort of soul experience. I think that art reminds one that we're more than just a physicality. I will never stop making and creating art. It may change forms, it may change scales, It may change audiences, but no. I have far too many ideas to put out there and to work on, and it will always be part of my life.